Star Wars 7x7 episode 2261. We've been talking about the Thrawn novel this week, but one thing we haven't really talked about so much is the audiobook version, and my non-spoiler review is right here. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, most times when we're talking about a novel in Star Wars, we're kind of talking about both the written form and the audio form because it's the same story, right? I don't think there's a single Star Wars story that's been released that has been abridged, as in having any of it removed, right? We always get unabridged stories. So when I talk about doing an audiobook review, it isn't so much about the story per se, generally speaking, as it is about the performance of the story as an audio situation. And for the most part, that is also the case with, here we go, Star Wars: Thrawn Ascendancy, open paren, book 1, Chaos Rising, close paren, or just Chaos Rising from here forward. But there is an element that was a little bit different. So I alternated between the written version and the audiobook version as I was going through the novel and preparing for our conversations with it. And thank you again to Del Rey and Penguin Random House Audio for sending me both versions for me to check out. Now, it so happened that I started off with the written version, and the written version actually opens up before it gets into the stuff of the novel with a dramatis personae, where it gives you a list of all the major characters, and when you read the names and you read their actual formal Chiss names, like Thrawn is actually Mithra Neurodo, right? And I could go on and on with all the other Chiss names. It gets a little overwhelming when you're looking at it. And then in the book, it moves on to talk about the Chiss Ascendancy and the 9 ruling families. So you get the names of the ruling families, the Ufsa, the Irizi, etc., etc. And then you get rankings in Chiss families. So there's blood, there's cousin, there's ranking distant, there's trial-born, there's merit adoptive. And then there's also a thing about the political hierarchy in the Chiss. Patriarchs, speakers, syndics, etc., etc. So all of these things, when you're looking at the written version, it kind of sets you up and you think, oh, this is a lot of information that I need to be familiar with in order to dive into this novel. And here's where it differs from the audiobook version, because the audiobook version doesn't provide that information. It doesn't give you the list of the main characters and deal with their names. It doesn't give you the list of the ruling families. It doesn't give you the political hierarchy. It doesn't tell you about family structure. So you are on your own. And I suppose that if I had just gone through the audiobook version, I wouldn't have known any better. But I'm happy to report that I don't think it makes a difference. In other words, I don't think you're going to get too lost if you just listen to the audiobook version without having that additional information. There are a couple of things, though, that as people move around in the Chiss hierarchy, that I think it would be useful to know if you're listening to the audiobook version, because names change. For example, one thing that maybe this was dealt with in Thrawn novels in the old expanded universe, now Legends, but part of the name is related to their family. So the myth of Mithra Neurodo is because he's part of the Myth family. And the character of Aralani, who is an admiral by the time we are dealing with her in the current state of novels, well, that's because when Chiss in the military promote above a certain rank, Commodore I believe is the rank, they lose their family name and they become all about the ascendancy and not necessarily about their family membership. And so Aralani used to be Ziara for short, and it would have been a little bit helpful to know, I think, that Ziara would eventually become Aralani just in the whole naming situation. I mean, her full name with the family name is Irizi Aralani, and so Ziara is where you get the shortened one before she becomes a Commodore and later an Admiral and drops the Irizi with the Z syllable at the beginning of her name being the link to her family, just like the th of Thrawn is part of myth. Yeah. So you can see where it gets a little weird. And if you don't have a couple of those cues when listening to the audiobook, then in particular, it was confusing to me initially about the transition from Ziara to Aralani, but it is the same character. Otherwise, the performance by Marc Thompson is just as terrific as you would expect it to be. And it still is amazing to me that the voice at this point is exactly what you expect it to be, particularly for Aralani and Thrawn, because those are two characters with whom you're already familiar if you have listened to other audiobook performances by Marc Thompson. Yes, I'm sure that he could just go back and listen to his previous performances and maybe that makes the voices come back more quickly to him, but my goodness, it is still exactly as you are anticipating it to be when he ramps up into the performance. And the production and the music and the special effects sounds, like all of that is up to the usual caliber, which is fantastic. I will say there is like one difference in the way that the story begins that's different from all other Star Wars stories at this point, and it kind of gave me an extra little tingle when they did it. And I don't know, I don't necessarily want to read more into it, but I'll explain it in just a second. I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Audible and say that you can get a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial if you go to sw7x7.com/audible. You've heard me talk about their service before. That's how you can get audiobooks like Thrawn Chaos Rising. Okay, yeah, I added the Thrawn to our conversational Chaos Rising to it, but that or hundreds of other Star Wars books in the new canon and the old expanded universe, aka Legends, thousands of other non-Star Wars titles, whatever you're into, it's bound to be at Audible. Check out sw7x7.com/audible for your free download and free 30-day trial, and to do so in a way that helps support the show. So in the opening of the novel, you're used to the narrator saying a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. This time, in both the written version and the audiobook version, Marc Thompson says a long time ago beyond a galaxy far, far away. So beyond instead of in. And I will say that when I read the written version of it, I kind of blew by that. I didn't pay too much attention to it when I hit the written version. But when I heard Marc Thompson's narration and I heard him say that, it actually gave me a little chill. Like, it made me think, ooh, this is actually rather remarkable. And it kind of sets you up for the notion that we are opening a door to an entirely new realm within Star Wars, and the potential for storytelling and excitement that opens is really cool. And so, that kind of started me off really strongly when I went back and checked out that part of the audiobook situation. So there you go. Still a great job by Marc Thompson, still a great job by Penguin Random House Audio with all the production, and yeah, just those couple little things will help you, make your way through the novel with ease if you're listening to the audio version of it. That is going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.